From the John DeVito Broadcast Center, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another broadcast of Armchair Experts with Jim Leon and Rich Massaro on the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network and Jack FM 89.7 WRHS FM Norwich on Wednesday, November the 16th, the year 2016. And here they are with a big smile on their face because the Cubs won, Jim and Rich.
Smile on our face, a song in our hearts. And the song is Go Cubs Go.
What was, remember the movie with a song in, was it
Song in My Heart? Yes.
It was Helen, I can't think
I can't remember.
It was a popular singer.
Well, wait a minute. John had the answer.
Which was it, John?
No.
Who was it?
No. Jane Froman.
Jane Froman
Was the
Good,
singer.
Jim. Boy, I'm glad you came up with that.
It's always helped to have parents.
And Jane
who were
Froman is way before our time.
before our time.
But
yes.
I saw the movie, I think, at least once.
I think I probably did too. That my mother watched it, and I wouldn't have an opportunity to watch something that I wanted to, so I had to.
Now,
I had to watch it.
Did she come back from? Did she come back from some kind of illness or injury?
Injury, I think, maybe.
A what, Jim?
Maybe an injury.
An injury, I think.
We'd probably
car crash or something.
We
like
should
that.
probably Google it, but who says we're not varied?
Yeah, really. We could talk about a lot of other goofy stuff.
We were. Hey, by the way, happy a day late. A happy Medicare birthday to you.
Man, I feel good. You know what? I heard from people that I'm just gratified. I'm not going to start to name names because then I'll miss people. But I heard people from the past and people from the present, and it just was thank you, everybody. I appreciate that.
It's a fun thing. It's a fun thing to see who you get a response from.
Yeah. Boy, and really, it is.
And it was funny. I got a birthday wish from Dave McBride, who used to be on radio in Chicago here because I follow him.
Okay.
He's actually a very funny, very amusing person.
Mm-hmm.
And he and his wife live down and he's kind of semi-retired, and he lives down in the Palm Beach area, I think. And I laughed one time. I'm following along on Facebook, and he and his wife were making a bar tour of the Keys. And he had stopped at a place in Key Largo called Alabama Jack's. And I've been to Alabama Jack's.
Okay.
And they have really good drinks, and they have absolutely outstanding conch fritters. And
what do they have?
Conch,
okay.
Yeah, conch fritters.
Yeah, sure.
And I think conch soup.
Okay.
And I posted, I posted something about, oh my God, I'm envious. I can just taste those conch fritters right now. And I get a response back from Dave say, I remember when you posted being here. And I'm going, wow, that's a few years.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know who has taken numerous trips down to the Keys and was pretty much an annual thing for him up until maybe a year or two ago is Jimmy Sunshine.
Yeah, I remember that.
He's done the Keys quite a few times.
Yeah, and I haven't been down there in years, and Dana and I keep talking. We got to get down there.
I imagine it's got to be a nice experience.
Yeah, it's the only problem is it's a little too pricey sometimes.
Yeah. Sure.
We went to we a number of years ago went down there during the summer, and we went down to Key West, which is an interesting town in itself.
Mm-hmm.
And they were having what they were calling the Underwater Music Festival that day. And they were having, on the radio, the local station was featuring local groups. And one group had a song that they were playing called Key West is Best. And it was done in a reggae style, and the lyrics were something like, I met a girl so lovely and slim. Imagine my surprise when she said her name was Jim.
I thought it might come out something like that.
In Key West, you just got to guess.
Yeah.
So I almost drove off the road.
I can imagine.
That one. So we're still in a Cub glow. I still am.
I sort of, you know what, Jim, the weirdest thing is, I thought, man, when the Cubs finally win the World Series, God knew if that was going to happen while I was still alive. But, when they finally did, I thought, man, I'm going to break down, or I'm going to, and you know what, I think what I thought about this, and I'm responding to what you're saying, because the glow sort of left for me pretty quick. I'm happy. There's no question I'm happy to have seen this. But I think one of the things is that it was almost, in a sense, so expected, because this team it just went from wire to wire.
It really was.
And not to say there wasn't any drama, because there was. But I just, I don't know. And we were texting back and forth in Game 7 when... what's his name? The little outfielder from the Indians, Rajay Davis, tied up the game. And I think every Cubs fan who's suffered through all the Cubs years that we have had the same thing, like, oh, my God.
Here we go again.
But you know what? This group was different, and it was a great championship. They're a great team. They are a great team.
Great ball club. And a week ago today, actually, we're doing this on Tuesday, the 15th. A week ago, on the 8th, we took a ride and spent the afternoon just wandering around Wrigley Field.
Oh,
and down
nice.
in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
Had my, got a picture of me in front of the sign and around the statues, and looking at all the things that people wrote on the walls,
Jim,
which was really quite unique, which has now all been sandblasted off, power washed off, because they've got to start working on the park. But they said they hope that this is going to become a postseason tradition.
Jim, do you find, though, I remember years ago when we first really became good friends, and we'd say, and our lives sort of diverged after we were out of high school, but we'd always say to each other, man, if the Cubs win it, we'll meet at
the airport.
O'Hare Airport
Yeah.
or whatever. And obviously that wasn't going to happen this time. But do you find that, and I'm not knocking it, because it's great to see the W flags and all the paraphernalia, but do you find that some of that takes a little bit of the, I don't know what you would want to call it, the nostalgia or the emotion out of the victory? And again, I'm not saying that this is a bad thing, but it's so almost in your face that it does take a little of the edge off for me anyway.
It does get a little bit much. I will tell you that when we went down there, we had ordered some shirts online, and my cousin Linda's husband, my cousin Linda's nephew, is the guy that has the company with the "We Didn't Suck" shirts. So we ordered those. We ordered the championship shirts. I didn't want any championship hats, actually, when we went down, because that, I'll throw it in the back of the closet and I'll never wear it again.
Yeah.
But when we went down there last week, I bought a Cub hat, but it was a 1933 vintage logo. I forgot to wear it today with the kind of a script looking C on it, but it was a 1933 vintage design, which I thought was cool. And being the cheap SOB that I am, it was $10 cheaper than the championship.
I was just thinking, Jim, 33, I'm not sure if they were in the World Series, but for sure
32.
They were in the World Series the previous year.
32, 35, 38.
Okay.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, but I thought, gee, that was cool, because
nice.
I've got a 1908 vintage one where they have the Cubby Bear on it, and another one from a vintage hat from time down at Sox Park. I have a Sox hat that they wore with the logo and the design from 1926, which I thought was cool.
Well, I discovered here, and not discovered, I probably knew this for quite a while, but I'm sort of in a time warp anyway, because all of the things that, the characters from history say that we grew up with when we learned about our history in 4th and 5th grade, and
Mrs.
all of the
Skoritka, Miss
movie
Finger
stars
Eye.
that our parents liked and we liked, and then of course, our contemporaries like Elvis and those. Though I'm stuck on those people. I mean, there are certain people in today's world, whether it's sports, entertainment, whatever, that I do like and have that same good feeling about, but way more from back in the.
Oh yeah,
and these people,
Yeah.
I find
Rich, we've
a
become
lot of them are like from the 50s and the 40s.
Rich,
which
we've
would
become
precede us.
Rich, we've become our parents.
Yeah, no doubt.
No,
So
don't discount it.
but it was Well, I'm not objecting to it, and it's not that I'm not interested in newer things, but I just sort of more comfortable with the other
The
things.
older stuff. I mean, I began to get some. I was kind of poking around and looking back in some memories.
Oh, John
there
just
you
brought
are.
a hat.
There you go. John got a hat. Got the. That's a newer design, John, with the when they put the Cubby Bear inside the C that they use now. But yeah,
Nice, John.
Yeah, I like that. I began to get, when I texted you the other day about Leon Russell
yeah,
passing away.
yeah.
And I started to look in his biography, and I did not, first of all, I did not realize a couple of the songs that he had written, one of them being This Masquerade. If you go back to the George Benson version in the 70s,
Oh, yeah.
which one, I didn't realize he was the composer of it. I did not realize he was a great session musician before he became a little more known. And I had heard the term, or I had heard reference to the term "the Wrecking Crew."
Thank you, John.
Yeah, I had heard terms or heard reference to a group of musicians when we went to see Herb Alpert and his wife a month ago. When he talked about recording The Lonely Bull, he said, "Well, we had to bring a side group in. We had to bring the side musicians in from the Wrecking Crew, which was a well-known group of studio musicians, sidemen,
Okay.
in Los Angeles."
Okay.
Leon Russell was a member of the Wrecking Crew. So then I started to poke around and wonder, gee, who else was in that group? I'd have to find out more. I haven't
did
found
you?
out.
Oh, you haven't.
I got.
I think I've mentioned this before, either to you personally or on the air, but this is 30 years ago. I remember Glenn Campbell, I think, was coming into town, and
Glenn Campbell was one of them too.
Was he one of them?
in those days? Yes.
And Glenn, so they had a short, not a short, they had a decent story on him in I guess the Sun Times it would have been. And I won't go into the whole thing, but I mean, Glenn Campbell has had an impressive career, obviously, as a starring attraction.
Mm-hmm.
But his career as you say, a backup musician, as a writer and everything, for various artists, I mean, just was, and it blew me away because I was still relatively young and I hadn't really thought much about that type of thing. And I was like, wow, that is fantastic.
Yeah. That one kind of kind of surprised me because I think the first time I remember hearing about like Leon Russell was that almost notorious Mad Dogs and Englishmen tour of Joe Cocker. Mm-hmm. When you talk about rock and roll excess,
Yeah.
at its finest,
Yeah.
20 musicians.
Oh, yeah.
And Russell was trying. I think Russell at that point in time was, Russell was supposed to be the orchestra leader, the band leader, but he was trying to push himself into the forefront over Cocker.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the story was they were rehearsing, and Cocker had been down in the islands somewhere and came back to rehearsals. Hello? Oh, I think my phone must have just beeped. I got the echo through it.
Oh, okay.
I'm suddenly going, what sort of noise are we hearing here? Let me mute that thing. But Cocker came back and to a rehearsal, and he sees all these musicians there, and he goes, "What the hell do we need two drummers for?" And Russell told him, "Well, I ain't going to fire one of them."
You know what? You reminded me. I'll tell this story on the air. It doesn't matter. There's nothing. obscene about it.
Yep.
But
Okay, John, put the phone down. Nothing obscene.
Years ago, we used to go, and we weren't. I think we might have been 21, and I'm talking when I say we. Scott Wazalis and myself, and whoever else was hanging with us at the time. We used to go to a place on North Avenue in Melrose Park called the Country Pub.
Vaguely remember it.
And I remember one night we were there, and Scott had been overserved,
Oh, no.
and
No.
they had the song. Ain't It, I don't know if this is the official name of it, but Ain't It High Time We Went, Joe Cocker, where it's got, and I can't reproduce the way the song goes, but if anybody knows that song, there's, Cocker will sing whatever the lyric, and then there'll be a part where there's some really hard piano music.
Probably Leon Russell.
And every time we would get to that part, we'd point at Scott, and he'd be pretending he's playing a piano on the table. he couldn't understand another thing, but when we'd point to him, he knew to do this. Oh man, it was hilarious.
It was so funny. I started to talk about some of those stupid things that we did. Then I told my wife about nights in the grog shop at the Prudential Building and coming out and asking the age-old question as soon as you left after they closed at midnight. Okay, did I drive?
Did I drive?
And if I drove, where's my car?
Yeah, well, then Chicago's a pretty big city, so
well,
you never know.
It was either if I was lucky enough to get, be granted parking in the Prudential lot that day, that was easy. But if I had to go to the old Monroe Street lot that was out in the open, that was a long search in a dark lot at midnight.
I have to say, too, obviously, since this is supposed to be a sports show.
Yeah, let's start. Maybe we should start talking sports. I'm trying to avoid. I'm still in the Cub glow, and I'm trying to avoid the Bears.
Mike Glob and Mike Caravia are friends of mine on Facebook, and they're both Sox fans, I believe.
Yeah,
but I know Glob for sure.
Glob is, yeah,
and not sure about Mike Caravia, but they were both on a post today where it's just a comment. Do you think the Sox should move? I think the gist of it was we're in better shape to make some moves than the Cubs were when they started their rebuild,
right?
Because we've got some chips.
They've got currency,
and they were talking about a Chris Sale trade, and somebody tongue in cheek said, "Okay, Sale for Schwarber and Soler." And Mike Glob said, "We'll take that one." Basically, I'm paraphrasing, but I'm thinking. I really think I don't know if that it's the right move, but I think Chris Sale is going to be moved.
Chris Sale, when I pulled up here, they were talking about it on the Score, and they talked about at least a half a dozen teams that are interested in them right now. Now the question is, how much do they want back?
Well, that's the thing.
That's the question. Is it wise for the other side coming back? But I think you've got. I'm thinking they really would like to get rid of Sale because I think the general feeling is Sale's act is worn thin, and they'd like to move him because they've about had enough of him.
See, the interesting thing though about this, and I'm saying this as a compliment to the Cubs brain trust. I'm not trying to say it as a knock to anybody else, but. Yeah, when you're going to trade a guy like Chris Sale, yeah, you're going to ask for a load of prospects back. But that's fine. But I think the beauty of what the Cubs did is that a lot of us, including me, didn't see when they would make a trade. Like I think you were for the Feldman trade.
That was when Arrieta and Strop. I was for the Feldman trade. I was for. I think the only one that bothered me was when they got rid of Paul Maholm.
But then when you look
I don't remember what came back though.
You know what? We might have got Vizcaino or somebody like that.
Who's now gone. Who's now been dealt.
I mean, Maholm no longer is in the league,
right?
And Vizcaino is
somewhere
with the Braves.
Did he wind up back with the Braves? Yeah.
But I think the beauty of what the Cubs did to me is how we'll talk about successful organizations and you'll say, well, how do they do what they do? And I'll say something to the effect is they see things a little differently. And and what the beauty of the Cubs thing is, okay, I didn't know who Jake Arrieta or Pedro Strop were. I knew that Feldman was having a decent year for us, but they knew that these guys had a good upside, and that's something that, okay, maybe other people in the game knew that, but as an outsider, you don't know that.
It was interesting too, and I know how much you love analytics, but I think the one thing that kind of stood out on Arrieta, looking at his record from the prior year, and I think even that year, if I remember right, and I have to set up a computer and go back and look at baseballreference.com. His earned run average was not terribly good.
Mm-hmm.
But his FIP, fielding independent pitching average, was quite a bit better. There was quite a difference between his earned run average and his FIP, which indicated a lot of his problems were not his doing. There may have been defensive issues, but what they tried to isolate was just the things that he was responsible for.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's probably the thing that caught their eye.
That makes sense. But you know what I of course we've had this conversation quite a few times.
I know how much you love analytics.
You don't have to have any analytics to see that your explanation right there is a really good one, Jim. But you don't need analytics to see that. If you send scouts out and they say, well, this guy, he's being put out to dry by poor defense. Or he's not getting the run support.
Right.
I mean, they can see that without any analytics.
They can see that. They can see that, but you don't have a scout there all the time.
No, you don't. But just think about this, Jim.
Yeah.
Baseball is a small community, really.
Yeah, it is. It really is.
In reality,
it really is.
So that word gets around, and I'm pretty sure that probably other GMs or other baseball operations people knew this, but the Cubs were the ones who were able to pull it off.
You talk about it being a small community and sending the scouts out. When we were when we went up to East Lansing this past spring, we stayed about a week up there and nosed around different things on campus. We went to a ball game while we were there. We went to see Michigan State and Indiana, I think. And we were in a section like in what would be defined as like a grandstand section in the stadium, the baseball stadium at Michigan State, sitting in the upper level, and see all these guys sitting down below us, all with windbreakers on and clipboards and things in their hand, and like in unison, when the pitch was thrown, everybody's speed gun came up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I said, well, we know who the scouts are.
Yeah,
I said,
no doubt.
Gee, I wonder who they're covering today.
Yeah.
Yeah. And everybody had their notes. Going back to the Feldman deal, I mean, you have to think Feldman was coming off arm trouble, I think. He'd had elbow surgery or something like that. And he was grateful for the Cubs to giving him a chance.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, his time in Chicago parlayed him to a nice contract. A nice when he went to Baltimore, continued doing halfway decent in Baltimore and parlayed himself to a nice contract. I think he wound up in Houston. Wound up in Houston.
Jim, the thing, and again, I think we've talked about it here on this show or just between you and I, but even they had the three really bad years, right? That would have been 12, 13, and 14.
Yeah.
Even those teams, though, because I just a week or two ago, after the Cubs won, I went back and checked the rosters on each of those 3 years and looked at guys' records. They always were, how could I put it? They were doing interesting things, though, because you know what? They would grab this guy to see. Well, take a look at a guy. Who's the guy? that they got from Boston, the lefty DeBrant. Okay, Felix DeBrant had a couple of solid years in Boston, and I would assume that they were there, or they still had contacts in Boston who
Sure.
were like. So that's a good example. They brought a guy in like that to see, does he have
What does
something
he have?
that can he help us? Another guy I think of who's not in that category, but a serviceable veteran player who had at least one really nice year for the Cubs. Best year he ever had in the majors was Donnie Murphy.
Yeah.
Okay, here's a guy. He's not going to be part of the
No.
future. We're not saying he's a great player, but you know what? We have to sort of at least have some respectability while we're doing this, and this is a guy who's helping us do that. It was really interesting what they did.
Yeah, it really was. And I mean, you go back and look at this. I mean, they did exactly what they said they were going to do.
Yeah.
There was no question. There was no straying from the plan. And for those who didn't understand the plan, like sports writers like
I don't know.
I can't, Sun Times writers,
Oh, okay.
Gordon Whitmire, who didn't understand the plan. Well, unfortunately, guys, I think you're dumb.
Yeah.
Because they did exactly what they said they were going to do.
Yeah.
Maybe we questioned some of the logic on some of the moves, like, oh my God, why are you getting rid of him? Can't you build around him? Well, you know what? You're not going to build around a Paul Maholm.
No,
You're
that's
not
what
gonna-
they saw.
You're not going to build around a Scott Feldman. Scott Feldman is not a pitcher. Scott Feldman does your taxes.
I thought he was your dentist.
Scott Feldman cleans your teeth.
Yeah. Yeah.
Scott Feldman is not your fourth starter.
Yeah. The other thing is that what we couldn't see and what they knew is as they started to build the farm system, what they had.
Yes, which is what they had to do.
Yeah. And you know what? That, though, was no secret in baseball because the way they started to lure some of these bigger, like a John Lester, a good free agent pitcher,
Yeah.
and is because they had this type of talent in the system.
Yeah. And it was either talent that you drafted and started to develop or came back to you in a deal for somebody.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
And you're not the one who said this to me, I don't think, but somebody said to me just recently.
Well, if it was smart, it was me. If it was an intelligent comment, it was me.
Well, it wasn't. So it wasn't you.
then it was Jimmy
Somebody
Sunshine.
said, "Well, where are they?"
Then it was Jimmy Sunshine.
Somebody said something about their financial situation and why they. Okay, the subject was Chapman and Jansen, the two closers.
Yeah.
And would they have the wherewithal to bid or get one of those guys? And they said, the Cubs don't have that kind of money. And I'm like, the Cubs at this point, I think, are rolling in money. At least put it this way, they can anticipate more revenue where they could make a purchase like that.
Your revenue streams down line are looking much better than maybe a few years ago.
Mm-hmm.
You know what? I mean, after shelling out $845 million to buy a team, and to go through 3 years where you lost 103 or 101 and 99 and 91 ball games, you still had halfway decent attendance.
Yeah.
But you have to start developing other things. So so we have advertising on the walls now, or big scoreboards that show advertising. Well, you got to do something somehow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You've got the development in a few years when the TV contracts are up of the Cubs network, equivalent to the Yankees.
Yeah.
Equivalent to the Yankees network. I'm just checking the time, John. Let's do a break before we continue on with these profound thoughts.
You're listening to Armchair Experts from the John DeVita Broadcast Center on Jack FM 89.7 WRHS FM Norwich and the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network on Wednesday, November the 16th, the year 2016, with Jim Leon and Rich Massaro. And this is Jack FM 89.7 WRHS FM, Norwich, Illinois. And now, back to Jim Leon and Rich Massaro and Armchair Experts.
Okay, we were talking about like revenue streams.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I don't know what the attendance was this year. It was probably over 3.
I never heard.
It was probably over 3 mil.
I guess, yeah.
You know. Plus, I don't know how the splits are on all the postseason revenue. I don't know what splits between, because that becomes a major league event.
Yeah.
That's not a team event.
Yeah.
So I don't know how they split that. You know, you've got all this developing. They are so wise in the fact that, you know, I think most of the rooftops now are owned by the ball club, with maybe the exception of Murphy's. I don't know, and Murphy's would, you know, I'm sure there was some settlement to get them out of the way. You know, you're developing. It was interesting too to go down there and see. You've got the hotel across the street that's being built.
Yeah, I haven't been down there, so you've seen it. I haven't seen
well,
it.
I
mean,
they have
where
cleared.
It's going to be, yeah.
You know, I've seen where it's going to be. It's where the McDonald's was.
Yeah. Okay.
And I think there was a gas station or something else along there. I was trying to remember, but that's all empty
Okay.
now. You've got on the old, and I was telling Dana about, as they referred to it as the Triangle property.
Yeah.
The Triangle.
Sure.
I said, I remember as a kid coming down here, you know, and it disappeared within the first couple of years of going to a baseball game. But I remember the old silos where they had the coal.
Okay.
You know.
Yeah.
And that's all gone now, and the office building is being built, which is where the Cub offices are going to be. And they're going to have retail there, and there's been such a fight in the neighborhood because the Cubs are going to have a restaurant and a plaza where they're going to serve alcohol during the games. And all the bars in the neighborhood are, of course, upset about it because, well, you're taking business away from us.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, but, you know, and they're trying to put limitations on the hours and when they can serve alcohol. But the Cubs are also trying to make this a community area, too. Like maybe during the winter they'll have an ice skating rink or something out there for that. So they're very wise in how they're looking at their business.
Are the Bears coming back?
No.
Jim, I have to. Let me cut. I have to ask you this, and John, I don't know if you would be in on this as well. When Northwestern played Illinois a few years ago at Wrigley, and they had to only
had to
offensively go one way.
Right.
Why was that? Because when the Bears used to play there, that was not the problem.
Yeah, because the problem was when the Bears played there, basically the field was set up from the left field wall to the first base dugout.
Right.
Now the modifications to the park have changed along the way where they didn't have the room. You've come out on that first base side a little bit more.
Oh.
Okay.
Okay.
So they basically went on an angle from like the third base dugout to the right field wall.
Yeah.
And
okay.
I guess it was, you know, you'd catch a touch. I think that they had enough room, but it was basically if you hit one in the end of the back of the end zone, you'd hit the wall.
There were no Bronco Nagurskis out there.
No. I was thinking of Bronco Nagurski.
Yeah.
The great story about Nagurski when he came back in the 40s. And he was old, but he could still bull through. And they'd hand the ball off to him, and Nagurski would put his head down and plow through the line. Mm-hmm. Hand off to him, put his head down, plow through the line. Got down to the one, turned around, hand off to him, plowed through the line, and ran in first right into the wall.
Yeah, my grandfather was there. He told me. He said, "Yeah."
And the old man asked him. He said, "You okay?" He says, "Yeah, but that last guy who hit me."
He hit me really hard. Bronk.
Yeah.
You know, Jim, I read that still the biggest ring finger ever sized for a championship ring is still Bronco Nagurski's.
Yeah.
Even with the size of the guys they have today.
Yeah, what was it, like a 22 or
Yeah,
something
it's
like that?
unbelievable.
Yeah.
How would you like for him to hit you?
Ooh, no.
I mean, that...
No.
He used to run a gas station up in... what's the Colt? Always is
International
the
Falls.
International Falls.
He ran, I think that was his hometown too, wasn't it? International
Probably.
Falls.
Yeah.
So I suppose we should...
You want to talk about the Bears? That's I'm segueing.
no,
Is that a segue?
nice subtle segue. John just groaned in the other room.
Ooh, yeah.
You know, I've used the term. And especially we could apply it in those those few years ago with the Cubs. Fun bad, where you'd watch a team and they were
Fun
bad.
bad. Yeah, fun
They were
bad.
bad, but you'd throw up.
Still like watching.
You know, you'd still like them. You'd kind of throw up your hands and laugh and go this. Sunday was not fun bad.
That was terrible.
Sunday-
I only saw a few plays.
Sunday was just really, really, really bad. And you mentioned about the pass to Conte being one of the dumbest,
Oh, terrible!
one of the dumbest passes you've ever seen.
That was terrible.
And Eddie Royal fielding a punt on the 5. I don't know what his thought was. He fielded a punt on the 5, gave ground, and they dropped him at about the 1.5 yard line.
You know what, Jim? I'm not a anti-John Fox guy like a lot of people are becoming. But when you start to see stuff like that happen, even though the players are making the errors, those are coaching issues in my mind.
Oh,
and I'm going to say
yeah.
that here's the reason why. A player should never have a mindset out there that he can turn the whole thing around. And can a player turn the whole thing around? Yes, they can.
There are
But you have to
opportunities.
do it within the how could you say it? You can't do it, for instance, as you
Structure?
said, by fielding the punt on the 5 and think you're going to go 95 yards. If the proper thing to do was to signal for a fair catch and let the ball bounce into the end zone.
Right.
Okay, you might get lightning in a bottle once in a while, and
Yeah.
maybe you'd go 95, but chances are you won't.
Yeah.
And especially if you're on a team that's going bad and nothing is going your way, you probably definitely won't. Cutler, to me, I've never, I have not been anti-Jay Cutler. I mean, I've been neutral on him. But my thoughts after seeing that pass that Conte picked off, and I just thought, poor judgment, I mean, on his part, Cutler's that is. And I'm thinking to myself, Jay Cutler, the criticism I would make, I'm not saying he's not talented. I'm not saying he can't win. Maybe he could win somewhere else. But I guess what in my mind I say, is he the guy who's just good enough to string you along, and I'm talking about as a coach or front office, to get you fired?
Oh, yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, exactly.
Because he's got the talent.
Yeah, exactly. He gives you that glimpse of something. You think, by golly, we got him. And what's the old saying? $1 million arm and a 10-cent brain.
Well, I mean,
You know.
this is the whole thing. You don't see the best players. You don't see somebody play as well as he did against Minnesota, which he did, and then play. I mean, you could have a little bit of an off game, but he didn't play well at all against Tampa Bay.
No. And when you see, there's about 3 or 4 stories that have come out since then that basically is saying the same thing. Cutler, of course, it could be somebody just regurgitating something somebody else said. Mm-hmm. But Cutler's lost the locker room.
Well, after last week, I don't know if that's true, but it's possible.
It's very possible. It'll be interesting to see what happens. It's going to be interesting to see what happens this week, and it's kind of fun when I watch a game, and I didn't have anything to do on. We didn't have anything to do on Sunday. There was nothing to do around the house. We had actually gone back to the old church in Bensonville, and I was invited to speak, and we did that, and we came back, and we had lunch there, and came back, and I said, got nothing to do. I'm going to put my feet up and watch the Bear game. And she said, Dana said, I don't have anything in your hands, so you throw it at the screen. She says, I'm going to go upstairs. I'll probably hear you scream
Yeah.
at one point. So I opened Twitter because if it's kind of fun when you watch a sporting event if you have Twitter open because people are commenting. It's like you're watching a game with like 1,200 people back and forth. Well, one of the first things I saw was they at where were they? They had the ball. Tampa had the ball on the 22, 23-yard line, something like that. Winston had to scramble. They chased him back into the end zone.
Mm-hmm.
And he got out of it, threw upfield, and hit a guy for a 39-yard gain. At that point, I said that last play has summed up the Bears' season in a nutshell.
When
Right
you
there.
texted me that, then I said, dude, you are so right on the money.
Yeah.
But the problem is it summed up many Bears
Many
seasons
Bears, but
with numerous other coaches.
this one especially.
Yeah.
And then on the next play, he hits his receiver. In fact, the guy I think was doing. I don't follow Tampa, but I also think he was doing the kicking too. Hit him in the end zone for a 43-yard touchdown, and at that point, the game was over.
Yeah.
Prior to that, it was I think 17-10. It was still within the realm of possibility.
Mm-hmm.
Hit him in the end zone, 24-10. I said, game over. That's it. And I can't imagine when you talk about, well, it's a coaching issue. What was one thing that Fox said after the game? Well, I didn't see this coming.
Mm-hmm.
Well, then what the hell are you doing?
Yeah. Well, there's three things, Jim, that I say if you can do them, you can win in the NFL consistently. You don't take stupid penalties.
Right.
You convert your third downs, and you stop the other team from converting their third downs. You'll win a lot of games. The Bears can never do it. You know what? I'll tell you right now, if I was on the sideline and saw the play you just described, where now you've chased the other team's quarterback back to the goal line, and he manages to complete a pass, fine. But now they gain 39 yards on the play.
It's on the play.
You know what? No, I'm not okay with that, ever, anytime. There's no way.
I sat there and looked at that in amazement, and I tweeted out. I said, watching decided to watch the Bear. Nothing to do this Sunday. Decided to watch the Bear game. Next Sunday, I'm going to find things to do.
I don't blame you. Who are they playing next Sunday, by the way?
Giants.
Oh, wow, that's a tough one.
Yeah, I mean between. The only positive thing, the only positive thing of the weekend was, well, Michigan State scored 49. Michigan State scored 49 points.
Who do they play?
Rutgers.
By the way, Jim, I want when you talk about the Giants, I watched part of the game last night.
I heard it was a good ball game.
It was.
We don't have
it was
cable,
good,
so
but I
don't
tell you
watch.
what, the Giants, in my mind. I don't often say this, but I think because of the rules, I'm not going to blame it on the refs, but because of the rules, if it was not for the rules, the Giants would not have won the game.
Mm-hmm.
The Bengals were up, I want to say it was 17-14, driving, and they were in the red zone, and Dalton hit, I don't remember who, it wasn't A.J. Green, it was another one of the receivers. And the guy made a beautiful catch, went into the end zone, turned over, and lost the ball. And the officials decided
Waved it off.
that it was not a catch. And I'm thinking, you got to be you got to be flipping kidding me. But by the rules of today, it wasn't a catch. And I'm like, this is ridiculous. Andy Dalton, who I don't see Andy Dalton play a lot, but like most quarterbacks, you're not going to probably be ragging on the officials. It's probably not good for your team.
Right.
But he got, he became a dynamic. You could see he was complaining. And I'm like, hell yeah, excuse my language, I'd be complaining too.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a beautiful catch, and it should have been a touchdown.
Yeah.
So the Bengals end up with a field goal and end up losing the game when the
20.
Giants score, end up losing by a point.
Yeah. 21-20.
And then they wonder why. why are the TV ratings down in the NFL? Well, think about some of that stuff.
Yeah, and I mean, you know what? When you have, there's other things going on. People are still going back to the Kaepernick issues and all that stuff and the protests. And
honestly, I don't think that's it. I think that's part of it.
I think that's part of it. I think that's a good chunk of it. But when you have your announcers on one of your premier events, your Monday night football game, your feature game, say, well, if they're, a game a couple of weeks ago when they say, well, if you're wondering why, if the NFL is wondering why ratings are down, they said, this game is a reason for it. This is, my God, how many flags have we had tonight?
Yeah, well, you know what, Jim? Here's the other thing, though. You got the guys, okay, you're kneeling or sitting or whatever they're doing, but then you top that off with something. I don't care what the media says. I don't care what Richard Sherman says. They're not letting us do this. They're not letting us do that. We're entertainers, blah, blah, blah. You know what? When a man makes a beautiful play or a nice run, or even a run that's last night, I think the running back for Cincinnati, Giovanni Bernard.
Giovanni Bernard.
Okay, I think the play was probably for about 20 yards, touchdown. Once he broke the line, there was really nobody, not much of a challenge for a professional back. So he scampers into the end zone. Pretty simple play. I think if a really good high school back would have been had that play and he would have got the ball, he'd probably be in the end zone like Bernard. But now he's doing the whole, I'm great, I'm dancing, Personally, again, I don't care what the media says or what the players say. I think people are sick of watching that crap.
I think a lot of it is. I think a lot of it is people are getting turned off by that stuff. They're getting turned off by the. They're getting turned off by the officiating. I mean, you texted me one time when you were watching a game, said the officials have made the game unwatchable.
Yeah. That's for sure.
And then that they have to sit there and confer about every play because nobody can figure out what it is, what's going on. By the way, you mentioned Richard Sherman about that. I did get a big laugh during the World Series when there were these commercials for pistachio nuts with the elephant in it.
I saw that. That was a good.
The one with Richard Sherman in
where
it.
he got whacked. That was funny.
They missed one opportunity to make that commercial really hysterical, and it was probably a financial issue that he wouldn't let them do it. I would have loved to seen the elephant look back at Richard Sherman and go, "You mad, bro?" That's a good. I saw that. I laughed out loud. It was hilarious. We laughed out loud, and I said that, boy, if he would have just looked at him and said, "You mad, bro?" that would have been perfect.
But I think these guys don't. There might be a part of the population that enjoys those antics, but I think what they don't realize is that maybe longtime fans are starting to say, you know what, I've seen enough of this garbage.
Yeah.
I mean, come on.
Yeah.
This is what you're supposed to be doing. I mean, why are you mugging for the camera?
Yeah, and why are I always remember one of the classic ones when Gastineau was in the league, and he used to do his sack dance.
The sack dance, yeah.
And he got past one guy one time, got past one of the offensive linemen, got to the quarterback, and in the process, the offensive lineman's helmet got ripped off. So he's watching Gastineau do his sack dance, and he's got the helmet in his hand by the strap, by the guard. Gastineau turned around and finished his sack dance and was facing him. He hit him right across the face mask with that helmet, and the fight was on.
Oh yeah. Hey, that's you know what, the interesting guy for me in the game last night, because it's such a contrast in his personality. Beckham scored a touchdown or two. And of course, he does the same antics in the end zone as the rest of the clowns do. But what's really interesting is the flip side. You didn't see it last night at all, but there's a really feisty guy. I mean, you don't mess around with Beckham.
Oh no,
I mean, you're messing with with fire if you mess with him.
Small but mighty.
Yeah,
you don't. You don't screw around with him.
And I actually wish they would. When the NFL takes action against him, I would wish they would take action against his clowning around when he makes a good play. But I don't think they should take action when he defends himself.
No.
I mean, he's not a big man, and I sort of like to see that. Because the referees can't do it for you most of the time, so you have to do it for yourself. And the way you do it for yourself is to back the guy off physically.
Mm-hmm.
Now, thank God we're not on a lot of stations, because I know we have a very sensitive population. So I don't want to be saying anything that's going to make anybody, go into a corner or anything.
They have to
and pout.
They have to go to their safe space.
Yeah, there's safe space, but there are some aggressive people out there. I hate to say that.
There's been enough of that this week.
Yeah,
this past week with
no doubt about
everything that happened.
Yeah, safe space.
Yeah, we got to go to your safe space, and we got to
Man, talk about something that makes you want to throw up.
Besides bear football, I can tell you.
That'll do it. Man,
that'll do it. I can tell you one person, I'm sure, one person is real happy about the way things are going right now.
Who is that?
Mark Trestman.
Yeah, I'm sure he is. Yeah, no doubt.
Because, geez, a couple of years ago, they came back from a bye week and looked good and laid an egg after a bye week. Yeah. Come back, you play one game in 23 days, and you come back and you throw a stinker out there like they did on Sunday, and you still hear the stories that Fox and Pace aren't on the same page. And then I asked the question: who's in charge? Now, some people have described John Fox as Tom Thibodeau, but without the wins.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'll do what I want. I'm in charge of football operations here. And what's your general manager doing then?
You notice, though, Jim, now that you brought Thibodeau up, and he's got this title, but a guy like Belichick, say, one of the reasons, I know you said, Belichick didn't do well in Cleveland.
No.
Although he did make the playoffs. And
did he? I don't remember.
Yeah,
he
did. I mean, but the biggest thing against Belichick, I think he was there when they had the whole Bernie Kosar thing go down.
Yeah.
That didn't go over well with people. But Belichick is basically his own general manager.
Yeah.
And that works if you're, if you're the right guy, obviously. Thibodeau is going to be basically his own general manager.
He's going to be his man in charge.
And this is the problem, where no matter how closely you might work, especially in football, where it's more authority-based. In baseball, say, where you've got whoever it is, Epstein, Hoyer, and you got Madden, who's sort of like roll with the punches type of guy, that might be a little different situation. But in football, where you got Pace and Fox, no matter how much they may want to be on the same page, they're not always going to be.
No, it's not always going to be that way. That's not always going to be that way.
Let's put it this way. We do not have an ideal situation going on here in the city with football. Jim Kelly, who I don't know where he gets his info, a friend of mine and somebody you've met.
I've met him.
Jim says, too many people making decisions. George McCaskey, Ted Phillips, Ryan Pace, John Fox, who's making the decisions? Now, they'll say, McCaskey and Phillips are saying, no, we're keeping our hands off of this. But are they? You don't know. You really don't know what's going on there.
No, I think Sweaty Teddy has got his hands in here somehow along the way. It was interesting, and I saw the reference to it, or the link to it, and I didn't have a chance to read the article. But I was listening to the Score today, and Barry Rosner was in with Matt Spiegel this morning, and they started talking about the specifics of the article. He feels that the Bears should somehow go, if they're serious, go after and hire John McDonough, because John McDonough knows how to build an organization.
Mm-hmm.
When he came to the Blackhawks, they had no organization. They had no front office. They had no nothing. They didn't even have anybody to answer the phone.
Wow.
You know,
Yeah.
they went out to lunch one day and they come back and the phone was ringing off the hook. And McDonough had to answer it and he says, "Where's the receptionist?" "Oh, we don't have one. We just answer the phone for free."
Oh, my God.
You know. And he said, "What kind of organization are you trying to present to yourself? You know, to your public out there? When you were sitting there with a sport that was an entertaining sport to watch at that point in time. You know, you were talking about some of the young players were starting to be in place. He said, you got to build the organization." And they said one of the first hires that McDonough made when he come in there was he called Scotty Bowman.
Oh, well, that was a good hire.
You know, and he said, "Come in here and take a look at and tell me what we need to do." And he paid him for it. And Rosner joked. He said, "Well, I'd have been happy to do it for him for like $18." You know, and he had used to talk about. Rosner talked about the fact that when McDonough was over in the Cubs, Rosner would go and sit in McDonough's office at Wrigley Field and talk about the fact that there were two things that he absolutely loved. Barry Rosner is a diehard, loyal Chicago Cub fan and a diehard, loyal hockey and Blackhawks fan. I mean, I think Rosner still plays, league hockey. And, McDonough talked about, he said, "Well, I don't know anything about hockey." He said, "I really don't know anything about hockey," but he understood marketing.
Yeah, right.
And he said, "They've got this in place." He said, "I don't understand why they're not exploiting it." Well, at that point in time, Bill Wirtz was still alive.
Yeah.
And who was basically running things? Well, Peter maybe was sticking his nose into it. And you had Bob Pulford. We need muckers and grinders and physical lads on our team. And he says, if the Bears are smart, you go out and hire somebody like a John McDonough. You could not go out like a John McDonough. You hire John McDonough.
I agree with that. I'd say, that first off, you did a great job of
Pulford?
My
Pulford impression?
No. The heck with your Pulford impression, but of laying that whole thing out. But that's true. I mean, as you talk about it, that is, that's right on the money.
Yeah.
We have, obviously the Bears are very dysfunctional at this point in time, and it doesn't seem. I'd like to think I think Pace and Fox are two good guys. I'd like to think they're on the same page, and it may not even be a matter of Pace and Fox. It may be other people, as you say, getting their hands in or their fingers in the pie. But, yeah, I'd love to see a guy like McDonough. Now, the problem, though, I think with the Bears, probably more than any other franchise we have in town, is the ownership. Because I don't think that's their business, and I don't think they have I just don't think they can keep their hands off of it.
Rosner talked about the fact you go back over the years. They've been screwing it up since Muggs died. And that's about 36, 37 years ago.
Yeah.
We're talking about George Halas Jr., who was really running the club after his dad stepped away into a role, and George dropped dead at a Bear game. Had a heart attack.
Yeah, I know.
Had a heart attack and died at a Bear game.
Yeah.
79 maybe.
Yeah, Muggsy Halas.
Muggs died then. He said, and since that point, well, with a couple of things, they brought in Jim. I think Junior had brought in Jim Finks, much to the dismay of the old man.
Yeah.
But who essentially built the 85? Who essentially put the places in place for the 85 Bears? Jim Finks. Then they ran him out.
Right.
Then you had Jerry Venisi, who was respected for his business acumen with the team. He was the attorney, I think, at one point.
I don't know about that.
I can't remember, but he was something involved. Well, they eventually McCaskey'd him out the door. And since that point in time, it's been one thing after another.
Yeah.
Michael had no idea what he was doing.
Well, it's a great point because I may not have all of the guys. I'm probably missing somebody, but say Jerry Angelo and Phil Emery, much maligned guys. But
Terrible
nobody
drafts.
can tell me
Terrible drafts.
that those guys aren't good football guys.
No.
They know what they're
They
doing.
know what they're doing.
And so the fingerprints on this are the family. And, whoever else has their ear, possibly a guy like Ted Phillips.
Ted Phillips' opinion is very well respected by the family. You talk about, I mentioned Michael McCaskey. When he was essentially shoved out the door and told his responsibility was going to be the re-landscaping of the team's facilities up in Lake Forest. I think that was after Virginia's father passed, or Virginia's husband Ed McCaskey passed away. They put him into the chairman of the board role. I happened to be down that weekend in Champaign. Had a friend who worked TV crew down at Champaign. And actually, at the time we were going back, they lived in Indianapolis. We were going to Indianapolis for something down there, so I took the train down, went to the game. I had a press pass, so I could get around there. I had a press pass, so I could get around, and I'm waiting for him after the game to finish up whatever work he needed to do. And Wayne Larrivee was doing the game that day on TV, and I'm standing back there, and he came back to the truck, and he had been the Bears announcer for I don't know how many years, and I think then he had gone up to Green Bay and become the Packers announcer.
Right. Yeah.
And he looked at me and he says, "Hey, how you doing?" I said, "Good, Wayne." I says, "Hey, can I ask you a question?" I said, "What do you think of the whole thing with the McCaskies and Michael being shoved out the door?" And he laughed and he said, "Mama took the T-bird away."
The McCaskies are probably really nice people, and but I think because George Halas was who he is or was, they think they know what he knows or knew, and they don't.
And they don't. There was actually a very nice piece I saw yesterday that Dan Pompei, who's a Football Hall of Fame writer, had posted. He got Virginia to sit down for an interview.
Oh, wow.
And she was reminiscing about back in the days and talking about growing up with the old man and going on the Red Grange tour.
Oh gosh.
With Muggs, her and her mother, and going on, and they took and essentially that's what kind of made pro football blossom back in the 20s.
No doubt.
That was really the start of it. He said, and they went on a barnstorming tour all over the country. I think there were 25 games or something like that.
They played a ton of games
after that. And they're down in Florida. They'd taken the train down to Florida, and they played a game in Florida. And the old man said, "Well, I just booked some games to California. We're going to California." And Min Halas looked at him and said, "You're going to California. We're going home." And she talked about the fact that, the way things are going now, she said the losing hurts. It really hurts. Mm-hmm. She's he described her, he said, 93 years old. Voice is good. She still has, gets around well. She drives herself to church for Mass every morning.
Wow.
Uses a walker to get around, but she said the losing hurts.
Yeah, well, hurts me too.
And obviously she described it that the way the ownership structure is in place right now. After her passing, that team will continue in McCaskey's hands. Now, the only ones that would be able to do it are the two minority owners, which happen to be Pat Ryan and Andy McKenna.
Oh, okay.
You got guys with money.
Yeah.
And they own 20% of the team. And that was really bought from George Jr.'s widow or ex-wife or something on that. I can't remember.
Okay.
There was a big fight. I know there was a big fight about it.
There was some issues there. Yeah.
There were some issues about it, but that's the way things are going to be. I don't know if it's obviously it's not going to be any better this year. I mean, if they keep up on the same track they are, they've got third pick in the draft right now. And by the way, if things the way they are right now, Carolina's going to have the 6th pick in the draft. Wow.
Yeah.
How the mighty fell.
Yeah. Well, that's a whole nother story.
That's another story. All right. I think we had a good one today. We had a lot. We
definitely.
We were all over the place
I'll tell you,
today.
Jim had his thinking cap on today. John, I don't think in all of the broadcasts we've ever done, we had as much deep thinking as Jim did today. And I'm saying that half jokingly, but I actually
I'm picking my feet up off the floor.
I'm saying it also, but it's true. Jim, he had a lot of really great thoughts on some of these subjects.
Yeah,
today.
there were some things that had been, I think it was the problems just actually sitting and watching the Bears Sunday that made me.
Well, that brought out a lot.
Whoosh, woo. I kept thinking back to that 1-13 team.
Oh, don't think about that.
That 1-13 team when they walked off in the old days at Wrigley Field when they had to walk back to the left field corner where the locker room and everybody would stand along the wall there and give him hell about it. And as Jim Dooley came walking past, somebody yelled at him and said, "Don't worry, Coach. Each game you lose is better than the next."
Yeah. I was at that year. I was at the Vikings game, and the Bears were huddled in the end zone, and fans were firing the snowballs in. And, yeah, it was interesting.
Yeah, I don't think I got to a game that year. I think I might have gone to a game the year before with either my dad or my uncle. My uncle had season tickets for years and years. And we saw a game. And Andy Livingston scored 2 touchdowns on kickoff returns.
Oh man, yeah, I think I remember that game.
I can't remember if it was 67 or 6. It might have been 67. I was at a game in 68. And I was there at the game. Sayers blew his knee out against the 49ers. But
that was actually a great game and a sad game at the same time.
Yeah, but I remember that game in 67, and all these old timers who used to sit up there were, where they been keeping him all year? Why hadn't they put him out there?
Yeah, that would be a typical.
These were guys that are starting to reminisce about Beady Feathers.
Beady Feathers, holy crepe! Yeah.
All right. We've run down memory lane. I think we've run out of things to talk about. For two guys,
we haven't, but we got to go anyway.
2 guys who can't figure out, 2 guys who never plan anything. We managed to kill about 70 minutes doing it.
Excellent.
All right. Hey, we had a lot of fun today. Catch you in a couple of weeks, and let's see. Spring training opens February 19th, I believe, or February 12th. I can't remember. I checked the dates. Pitchers and catchers report.
And goodbye to all you Jane Froman fans.
That's right. We love you. All right. That's it. We're Taillights.
You have been listening to Armchair Experts from the John DeVita Broadcast Center on Wednesday, November the 16th on Jack FM 89.7 WRHS FM Norwich and the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network with Jim Leon and Rich Massaro. This broadcast was directed by John DeVita, and our special thanks to radio station manager Kevin Zeflik of WRHS FM Norwich and the executive producer of Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network, Mr. John Shikanda. This broadcast was pre-recorded on Tuesday, November the 15th, the year 2016. Until next time, friends, please be safe And thanks for listening. And this is Jack Frost FM, 89.7 WRHS FM, Norridge, Illinois. Have a great day, everyone.